joining this event. My name is Glenys Birtfield. I'm co-vice chair of Ezra. I just want to thank you, because without you joining these events, being members, Ezra can't do what we do, which is help the different communities all over Israel with many different things. So please keep joining the events, and if you're not a member, please become a member. It's very important to us, and we love to see you at these events. This evening we have Shavit Ben-Chorin, who will speak to us. He'll talk to us about the practical workshops and will present various legal tools that benefit senior citizens in order to prepare optimally for this period of their lives. Some of these tools are actually available at no cost, and it's a shame not to use them. Find out how senior citizens can settle all their affairs and give themselves and their families peace of mind in the knowledge that they are properly prepared for the future. Shavit Ben-Chorin specializes in the elder law, as he calls it, with regard to all its different aspects and issues. He's a lecturer on advanced legal planning for the elderly, and he holds an LLB degree from Tel Aviv University. He's also a member of the Professional Committee of Durable, Enduring Power of Attorney, Israel Bar Association in the Tel Aviv district. I'm going to hand you over to Shavit, but if you have any questions as we go through the conversation this evening, please add them to chat. If you want to chat, you want to ask questions at the end, we'll open up and unmute you. So at the moment, I'm going to hand over to Shavit and enjoy the evening. I'm sure you're going to find it fascinating. Shavit, over to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of you for joining us to this Zoom workshop. I'd like to thank Jack from Ezra Ra'anana, who organized the event, and Glenys for hosting us tonight. My name is Shavit Ben-Chorin. I specialize in elder law, and as Glenys mentioned before, I lecture at banks and the different retirement homes and municipalities. And I also write articles, especially for the Ezra magazine. And I'm very glad to be here tonight. I'm based in Ramat HaSharon, but I meet my clients all over the country, from north to south to Jerusalem. And I'm also glad to tell you that this evening you don't have to write anything, because I prepared a summary of this lecture, and we'll have it sent out to you by email through the Ezra system, so you can sit back and listen and enjoy what we're talking about. Like Glenys said, at the end of the lecture, I will answer questions. You can write your questions in the chat, or later on at the end, we'll open the mic and for any questions that you may have. So let's get started. Just a second. Okay, sorry about that. Let's get started. Okay, so what's this workshop all about? This workshop is about different things that I've encountered during my work, where I find that a lot of people, there are different tools that they can use that'll benefit them in their days to come, and they're not aware of them. Some of them, or even most of them, are at no cost, and it's a really pity not to prepare yourself properly for the future and use these tools. And that's the basic idea behind this workshop. We're going to be talking this evening also about how a person can take control over that he has no control when he gets older, when he may become mentally incapacitated, or things are just more difficult for him to do, or even if he dies. We'll talk about burial arrangements. It's an emotional subject. Sometimes it's not so easy to talk about, but once you finalize your matters and you're well prepared, then you feel safe and know that you could go on with the future, with your life, and put things behind you.
Shavit, excuse me, can you go a little bit louder? Some people are not hearing too well.
I'll try. Just a second. Okay, I'll try. I'll try to speak a little louder. If there's still a problem, I'll put my earphones on. Tell me. So the first subject we're going to talk about this evening is bank accounts. Banking for senior citizens is a very important factor. It's for anyone, a bank account is their lifeline. But senior citizens, they really need to plan for the future with their banking. And many times, they need to make some new arrangements with their finances. People who do not prepare their bank properly for the days to come, they may find themselves in different kinds of issues. For example, they need help and nobody can help them. There's no family member with an official power to help them out. For example, 2020, March, April, Corona is all over the place. People were sick with Corona. They were put into different kind of departments and hospitals where they're secluded. And for example, suppose you had to pay a caregiver, you had to pay your rent, you had to pay something to anybody. And if there's no backup, if there's nobody who can run your bank account, if your spouse also has Corona with you and there's no child that has a power of attorney on that account, then you're in great difficulties. Another problem is people that have their account frozen. I'll talk about that in a second when that arises and how you can solve all these problems beforehand just by going tomorrow morning to your bank and sorting what has to be sorted out. So the first thing that you should do with your bank account is, like I said before, is to empower a trusted family member, a child, or some people who have an account on their own and their spouse is not part of the account, then it would be the spouse, but definitely a child from a younger generation, and empower them with a banking power of attorney so they can actively help you one day, like I said before, in case of an emergency. On a day-to-day basis, you may not need any help, but when something emergency arises or a difficult situation arises, suppose you fall on your house and you break your hip and you can't get to the bank to sign some important document or pick up your credit card or something like that. So if you in advance gave a banking power of attorney to one of your children, he can help you out. Each bank has his own official form for this purpose. All you have to do is go to the bank, you make an appointment. Nowadays, you make appointments at banks. You make an appointment, you go with your child, you take your Teudat Zehut, the child comes with his Teudat Zehut, you sit there for 10 minutes, you sign a whole bunch of papers, and then your child is there anytime in the future. He can help you out. He'll have a password and he can log on to your bank account from wherever he is and help you out with the banking. He can transfer money on your behalf. He can check to see that your account is being run properly if you have difficulties or you don't understand, if you're not a financial person. Or you could even add the child as an account owner. You could make him an owner of the account. In that case, it's much more than just giving him a power of attorney. You got to understand that in that case, you're actually giving him part ownership of the funds that are in that account. But that's also a possibility, and some people, they opt in for that situation. What's really important is to understand is that also, if you give a banking power of attorney, the ability to its holder, suppose I appointed my son and I gave him a power of attorney at the bank, it's automatically notified when I become mentally incapacitated, or obviously if I die, but if I'm mentally incapacitated. And in that case, the only way to prepare properly for your future would be to prepare a durable or an enduring power of attorney, which I'll talk about in a second. So remember, stage one, you go to the bank, you go with your child and you give him a power of attorney at the bank. Stage two, we'll talk about that in a few minutes, is how to prepare for a situation where a person may become mentally incapacitated. And it's important to note that suppose it's a joint account, me and my wife have a joint account. Suppose I become mentally incapacitated, the account will be frozen until things are sorted out, until either my wife is appointed as a legal guardian, or if I prepared a durable power of attorney in advance, then she can handle the account if I've appointed her to take and substitute me if I'm mentally incapacitated. Another very important matter to take care in your bank account is to attend to a survivorship clause. In Hebrew, it's called Seif Arichut Yamin. The survivorship clause is a clause that usually appears in the opening of the account agreement. When you open the account at the bank, you should have had what's called a survivorship clause, where that clause defines that even if one of the account owners dies, the other owner can still continue to operate the account. He cannot take full control over the account, but he can still continue to take control of the account. What do I mean by that? I'll give an example. It's a real example. A client of mine, the husband died suddenly. He wasn't even sick. He got a heart attack and he died. the husband was buried, they came home for the Shiva. The next morning, the wife got a call from the bank informing her that they got notice from Misad Apnim that her husband passed away. That was yesterday, I'm reminding you, not a month later, yesterday. He passed away. The next day, the bank already knew about it, and the account was frozen. It was frozen because the couple did not attend to have a survivorship clause. Accounts that were opened many years ago did not have automatically a survivorship clause, thus meaning that the account is frozen. And that woman, instead of sitting Shiva, she was busy with handling banking, making sure that her children, all her credit cards were canceled, all her Horaot Keva were canceled. She was very, very troubled, not only with the death of her husband, but that her account was frozen. And now she had to borrow money from her children until she had her husband's will probated. That took about 6 weeks to be done. In all that time, her bank account just sat there with a lot of money in it. She could not touch it. Had she attended to a survivorship clause, that would mean that the account would not be frozen, and that would enable that wife to continue paying, using her credit card, and continue paying her bills and paying her caregiver and whatever had to be done until the husband's will was probated. It's a big difference when you have a survivorship clause or if you don't have one. So it's very important to check. Anybody who has a joint account should contact his bank to make sure that they have a survivorship clause. Seif Arichut Yamin, that's what you have to tell your banker. And if you don't, then all you have to do is go with your spouse to the bank and sign 5 minutes, a piece of paper, and that'll solve all the problems that I talked about and giving you an example from real life. And then it happens every other day. That happens to people that don't have a survivorship clause. Next, let's talk about finding abandoned accounts, some lost accounts, some unclaimed, what we call unclaimed funds. What are those kinds of funds? Those are funds that you may not be aware of, that you have an account, a forgotten account, someplace on the way you moved a few times and you don't receive the annual reports anymore, so you kind of lost track of some bank account or something that you may have. You don't remember, maybe it was so many years ago, you don't remember because it was just a small amount of money that you have in that account and you just don't even forget about it. Those funds are just waiting for you to collect them. They're there, they don't disappear, but you got to find them. So let's talk a second about how you find them. So first of all, let's explain what types of funds that what can you find? So you can find inactive retirement accounts, pension funds, kupot gemel, keren ishtalmut, anything that you ever had, even when your first days here in Israel, either when you made Aliyah or if you were born here, it's there. It doesn't disappear. You just have to locate it. You may have an inactive bank account, a savings account, a checking account. Maybe you opened another account one day, not at your regular bank where you usually do your things, but you lived somewhere else and you had an account there and you forgot about that. If you have any insurance policies or things like I said, bituach menahalim or kupat gemel or things like that, those are also funds waiting for you to find. People move from job to job, and many times, every time they start a new job, they have a new policy opened and they kind of forget about the old one, but the old one is still there and they have a lot of money in it. You also may have funds that belong to your deceased relatives and that they didn't know where they were and you didn't attend for it. You even maybe had their will probated, but you didn't know that your father or your mother or your brother already passed away. Maybe you had 100,000 shekel in some account that you didn't even know about, so you couldn't even contact that bank. So what do you do? How do you locate these lost accounts? All you have to do is go to your computer, log on to the official websites. There are official websites from the state of Israel. One of them is called Har HaKesef. The other one is called Har HaBituach. Okay? All you have to do is log on, you identify yourself there, and you make a search under your name, or you can also make a search under the names of your deceased relatives. I mentioned official websites because when you go on to Har HaKesef or Har HaBituach, if you write that in Google, you'll get many options for companies who will do that for money, but there is no cost. You can do it yourself. Just make sure that you're in the official website. Over here, you see the official website the official website. And in the summary that I'll send you, you also see it there. So make sure you're on an official website. Remember, no cost. All you have to do is go on, log on, identify yourself, and you may find you may be very surprised what you may find in both these websites, Har HaKesef and Har HaBituach. Next subject on our evening agenda is the Israeli living will. In Israel, there is no term called a living will, like you may have heard in other countries. What we have is the Terminally Ill Patient Act. In Hebrew, Chok HaCholeh HaDote Lamut. This act enables us to prepare a so-called living will and empower trusted people who can decide in your place on what medical treatment should be provided to you or not provided to you if you're terminally ill in a case when you are mentally incapacitated. I'll explain about it in a second. Also, part of this is how to give in advance DNR instructions, do not resuscitate instructions. So, what are we talking about? We're talking about the Ministry of Health that governs the Terminally Ill Patient Act. And essentially, we're talking about how you want to end your life. That's what you're talking about. The Terminally Ill Patient Act defines a terminally ill patient as a person that even if he receives medical care, his life expectancy will not exceed 6 months. If that's the situation, then there are two possibilities. You can be a terminally ill patient, and if you're lucid, then you give instructions to the medical staff which different treatments you wish to receive and what you don't want to receive. So even if you're very, very old or very, very sick or lying in bed and you can't move and you can't speak, but all you can do is blink with your eyes, yes or no, you can convey to your doctor and say, when he asks you, do you want chemotherapy? You can blink with your eyes for 1 for a yes, 2 for a no. And that consists of how you control what treatments you will receive when you're a terminally ill patient. But what happens if you're a terminally ill patient and you are mentally incapacitated? Who can speak on your behalf? Suppose I'm terminally ill and the doctor wants to give me chemotherapy. Can my wife, and I'm mentally incapacitated, can my wife instruct the doctor which treatments I should receive and which I should not? She could tell the doctor, but the doctor doesn't have to listen to her. She has no official say. The only people that have an official say in that matter is either a person who was appointed as a legal guardian. If my wife was appointed as my legal guardian to my body, she could tell that to the doctor. Or if I prepared in advance a power of attorney for issuing directives as to medical care to a terminally ill patient. It's a document that's intended to appoint a trusted person to give instructions to the medical staff if I am mentally incapacitated and a terminally ill patient. A few words about euthanasia in Israel. In Israel, there is no euthanasia. There is no possibility to actively cause someone's death or assist him to die. There is no situation like we see in the movies in Hollywood where the family stands around the bed and someone nods to the doctor and then the doctor goes over to the respirator and turns it off and then you get like a flat line like we see in the movies. The only things that is possible in Israel is when a person is determined to be a terminally ill patient at his final stage, which is life expectancy of 2 weeks. In that case, and only in that case, are instructions that can be given to the medical staff not to resuscitate, not to give artificial respiration, not to attach to a respirator, and not to give intravenous or tube feeding. Only when a person is at his final stage. If the person himself is lucid, he can give those instructions. And if he's mentally incapacitated, in the document that I'm going to show you in a second, he can give power to the people he is appointing to give those 3 Israeli DNR instructions. The 3 Israeli DNR instructions are not to resuscitate, not to give artificial respiration, and not to give tube or intravenous feeding. It's important to notice, you can't pull the plug from the respirator. Once a person is on a respirator, you can't disconnect them. The only instruction you can give is not to connect them to a respirator. You got to give that in advance. The person himself can give that instructions if his mind is okay. But if he's mentally incapacitated, he has to appoint someone in advance to be able to give those 3 DNR instructions. Over here, I'm showing you what the document looks like. It's a very simple document. that you fill out in handwriting, and you can appoint a few trustees to give instruction to the medical staff. You can make a hierarchy going, for example, first one your spouse, then child A, then child B, or you could also decide that the instructions must be given jointly, which would mean everybody together. Page 2 over here, you can appoint some extra trustees, like I mentioned before. And on the next page, I'm not going to show you right now, you can also mark those 3 DNR instructions. Another possibility, instead of giving a power of attorney to someone, you can give advanced directives as to the medical care you will receive or not receive if you are mentally incapacitated and a terminally ill patient. What does that mean? You get to choose today which different kinds of procedures you wish to receive and what you want avoided. For example, you can give directives that you do not want dialysis, or you don't want chemotherapy, or you don't want any kind of extending life procedures. The document is quite a complicated document that you tick if you to perform or not to perform. To fill out this document, you have to go, and first of all, you have to go to your doctor. He has to explain to you each procedure. He has to sign the document, and only then you can sign the document. What's very nice about this terminally ill patient form is that you don't need a lawyer for this. All you have to do is download the documents, and you sign the documents in front of 2 witnesses that are not family members. Like I said, if it's directives, you also have to have your doctor sign off on it. If you're just filling out the power of attorney, like I showed before, you don't need a doctor for that. You just have to sign in front of 2 witnesses. The 2 witnesses can be your 2 neighbors, could be 2 friends of yours, just not family members. And all you have to do is send those documents to the central data bank at the Ministry of Health. Those forms are accessible through the system to caregivers at hospitals. Once it's registered, you'll get a copy back to your home with the certification that it's been registered. And if one day something happens to you, your trusted ones, all they have to do is show the document. And if they can't find the document, they contact the central data bank of the Ministry of Health and have it sent to them for you to give for your family members to give those instructions, for those DNR instructions. The document itself is valid for 5 years. Before the 5 years are up, you'll get a letter from the Ministry of Health asking you if you want to extend those instructions for another 5 years. If you want to, you tick the box yes, sign in front of 2 witnesses, and send it off for another 5 years. So in this way, you take control over your future, you express your wishes in writing, you make it much easier for your family. They can, instead of going to court and be appointed as legal guardians in order to give instructions, for example, not to extend your life and have you suffer, they can be beside your bed in your last days and not worry about different kinds of bureaucracies in order not to have you suffer. Next, I want to talk about a durable power of attorney, or an enduring power of attorney, as it's known in the UK. What is a durable power of attorney? A durable power of attorney is a means for you to take control over a day you have no control over, a day that you may become mentally incapacitated. And that happens. And as you get older, more chance a person may become mentally incapacitated. Statistics say that over the age of 90, 50% of the people may suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia or things like that, which consists of being mentally incapacitated. So a durable power of attorney, it's a legal document that enables you to appoint a trusted person or a few persons to handle your affairs if you become mentally incapacitated. In Israel, it's a very new solution. It was only introduced in April 2017, and it actually embodies your right to decide how you want to live in the future. It's a document that for this one, you have to have a lawyer, and not just any lawyer. You have to have a lawyer that's certified by the Ministry of Justice to prepare a durable power of attorney. And I always tell people it's the best gift one can give to himself once he's a retired person. The document looks like this. It's not a Word document. It's a document which is issued through the computer system of the Ministry of Justice. There's a framework within it. The lawyer who's preparing the document, for example, myself, I connect to the system of the Ministry of Justice, and I work inside their framework and prepare the document, which is 14, 15, sometimes even 18 pages long. And it's a document. I'll explain in a second. It's the officiality of this document is by the fact that it's issued by the State of Israel, by the Justice Department. It's recognized by all institutions, by the government, banks, healthcare, Kupat Cholim, and the hospital, any place that someone has to do something for you. And what it actually does, it replaces legal guardianship, apotopsut, if you've heard the term in Hebrew. What is legal guardianship? Legal guardianship was the only possibility available in Israel until 2017, when a person became mentally incapacitated. Suppose, for example, now my mother is mentally incapacitated. I would have to go to court, get a lawyer. I would have to have a psychiatrist evaluate my mother and confirm that she's mentally incapacitated. I would have a social worker write off and explain about the family and write her document for the court. And then I would have to wait weeks for the court to appoint me as a legal guardian to my mother's body, which would enable me to handle her medical care matters, or, like we said before, giving DNR instructions, for example, or I would be appointed, or together with being appointed as a legal guardian to my mother's body, I would be also appointed as a legal guardian to my mother's finances. And that would enable me to handle my mother's finances. But that comes at a cost of me having to give in every year a very elaborate form with all the assets my mother had at the beginning of the year, all the funds she had in the bank, and all the expenses. Every little expense, starting milk and bread and going on to healthcare and anything that was spent on behalf of my mother during that year, I have to account for. I have to give it into a CPA who will also make an accounting of that, and only then that goes to the court. It's very complicated, a lot of bureaucracy, having to deal with the court in these matters. And also my mother, then everything, she can't decide anything anymore. She can't give any instruction because it already happened. So for that, we have a durable power of attorney. What's important to understand, what's the difference between a durable power of attorney and any other kind of power of attorney? For example, a banking power of attorney, like I said before. Any kind of power of attorney a person gives, even if it's a notarized power of attorney that's not for, for sale of an apartment, is void once the person who gave it is mentally incapacitated. The idea behind that is the law wants to protect a person who's mentally incapacitated and states that all his power of attorneys are void because he can't overlook the people he appointed, he can't cancel, he can't change the terms. So all of them are just void once the person is mentally incapacitated. The only kind of power of attorney that's not void is a durable power of attorney. The word durable means that it stays effective even if the person becomes mentally incompetent. What types of affairs are part of a durable power of attorney? The person who's executing the power of attorney, who's called our principal, he can give instructions regarding his financial affairs, his medical affairs, and his personal affairs. What are the benefits of preparing a durable power of attorney? Like I said, you take control over the future, you express your wishes in writing, you make it easier. It's the easiest course of way for your family to handle your matters in the future. And of course, by preparing everything in advance, you avoid family disputes, you avoid having to go to court, you have peace of mind that everything's prepared, and also your children. Next subject is how to plan your personalized burial. So first of all, it's very important to know that in Israel, a person is entitled to free burial plot in his hometown. So if I'm from Ramat Sharon, then I can be buried in the cemetery of Ramat Sharon at no cost at all, zero. Okay? Important to understand that because in other countries it's not like that. But there's also a possibility to purchase a burial plot. You can, when will you want to buy a burial plot? Well, in one case is if you don't want to be buried in your hometown where you're getting it for free. In another case, you want to reserve maybe a place that I'll explain in a second. So first of all, if you log on to the website of the Ministry of Religion, you'll see an information and price calculator there as far as what a plot costs in each town. The price is a basic price, but it's specific to each city. And you'll see that there's also a discount for a spouse who wants to buy the adjacent plot or a double plot or a Sanhedrin, a wall plot. An adjacent plot means you're buying a second plot next to your spouse, and there's a certain price at a discount, you buy it at a discount. You can buy also in advance a double plot. Nowadays, in all the new cemeteries, the plots are doubles. You get buried one on top of the other, like in a bunk bed. Or there's also in the wall, like you've seen in the wall, you can also be buried in the wall. Many places nowadays, the free burial is in the wall, and if you want to be buried in the ground, then you have to pay an extra cost. Civil burial is free, is also free for residents in cities that have a civil cemetery. For example, Be'er Sheva or Kfar Saba, for example. Some cemeteries, even though that they're religious, they also have a civil plot. And in some civil cemeteries, it's free if you're non-resident. For example, Be'er Sheva is a very big civil cemetery, and you can be buried there for free, even if you're not from Be'er Sheva. You can also be, some places you can also be buried in a coffin. Many times people tell me that it's important for them, they don't want to be buried not in a coffin. And obviously in civil burial, that goes without saying. But there are some cemeteries, even though that they're religious, that they're very liberal as far as how they conduct the services. And you could also have a burial in a coffin, sometimes in a religious, depending on the city where you live in. Many times I get asked about cremation. Cremation is legal in Israel. All you have to do is, first of all, you can give instructions to your family that you will be cremated, but the best is to pre-acquire cremation services from a few companies that are available. The main one that you may have heard one is called Alei Shalechet. You can contact them and prepare either, you can sign a contract where you pay the whole fee, which is about 12,000 shekel, and you pay that up front, or you can pay just like a 30% down payment. And the benefit of that is that, first of all, you've expressed your wishes very clearly to your family, and also you made it much easier for them because all the family has to do is notify the company, and then the company will take care of everything as soon as you notify, as soon as they're notified that the person passed away. Another possibility as far as burial or not burial is donating your body to science. That's also a possibility. You can donate your body to the Tel Aviv University, to Hebrew University in Jerusalem, or the Technion. And if you decide to do that, you have to decide between two options. The option one is after a year, your body is returned to the family and you get buried, or what's called a permanent donation, where there is no return. You go and you're not ever buried. Next thing I would like to talk about this evening is a retirement facility agreement. In Hebrew, Heskem Diur Mugan. What should you consider and how should you obtain the best terms possible if you decide to move to a retirement residence? So first of all, I don't know if people here have seen what a contract like that looks like, but it's kind of like a small book when you want to move into a retirement home. And before you make your first move, first of all, you gotta decide where you want to go to. And in that case, you should look at a few factors. First, the location, of course. Where is it? Is it out in the middle of nowhere? Is it in the middle of town? Is it close to your family, which is a very important something to consideration. Is there public buses in the area? Is there shopping malls? Is there a library? Is there cinema? So location obviously is a very important factor. Next is the background of the people who live in this place. What language do they speak? If you're an English speaker and it's really important for you to live in an English-speaking environment, then there are very few possibilities. If you are religious, you may want some place that's a little more religious. So check out and find out exactly where you're going. Obviously, the cost, you got to take that into account. The cost can be very, very high. There's a big deposit, an entrance fee. There's maintenance charges, even though that you pay a big deposit, there's also a monthly maintenance charge, and you may also need other kinds of services. You want your apartment cleaned, you may want food or things like that, so you got to take that into account. Collect information about who and what is the company who runs the place. There's some very big companies that have a lot of expertise. There's smaller companies that only have one retirement place, so you got to check out and see the track record and get information about who runs the place. Obviously, the size of the apartments, how big is the public areas, and what the facility looks like. The range of services, obviously an important factor. A very important factor is what medical services are available. Is there a doctor? Is there a nurse? Can they provide, for example, a caregiver to live with you? What happens if your health deteriorates and you need to move into a different kind of a ward? And can your visitors come and use the facilities? Suppose it's a pool. Can your grandchildren come to the pool? Things like that. Very important matters to think about. So like I said, when you do receive that big contract book, you should look at it as just as if you're buying an apartment. It's not something to think of lightly. There's a lot of money involved. The deposits could be 1.5, even 2 million shekel. And you gotta look at this as a transaction, just like you're buying an apartment. A few key issues that you should be negotiated as part of this contract. And remember, the contract is negotiable. Also, the legal terms and also the financial terms. Both are negotiable. It's not that you just presented that book, the contract book, and sign it. It can all be negotiated. What are the matters that you should really look when you get the retirement home contract? First of all, obviously, make sure that the place has a license to operate. What are the range of services that are part of the contract? The maintenance fees and how they're calculated and how they rise during the year. Any additional charges that are not in the basic maintenance fees. A very important factor is the securities to safeguard your deposit. Remember, the deposit gets amortized, and you can negotiate how much the yearly amortization is. But also at the end, if you leave or if you pass away, your heirs, they're entitled to get what back was left. So it's important to understand and have protection for that money. The deposit, is it linked to the Israeli index or not? Very important. What happens? How do you get repaid once the contract is terminated? There is no reason to have an exit penalty if you terminate the agreement. You can negotiate a trial period of 1 or 2 or 3 or 6 months, depending on the agreement. You can what lifestyle is conducted in the apartment. Can you accommodate a caregiver? What's the cost of accommodating a caregiver? Usually it's an extra charge, 500, 600 shekel when you have a caregiver living with you. Even if your apartment is big enough or something like that, there's a charge for accommodating a caregiver, but you got to make sure about that so they don't overcharge you or they don't tell you, oh, you can't have a caregiver. When a person will be moved to a frail care unit, if there is a frail care unit, when can the company evict you from the apartment? Any option to have external services provided to you. Other important things have to do with assigning the rights, that the company who owns the place won't assign the rights to somebody else, and then you'll find yourself with a new company running the place that may have no track record. All those are key factors that are negotiable, and you should keep in mind when you move to a new place. Next, I'd like to talk about senior citizens and how they can cancel a remote sale transaction. We're talking about the Consumer Rights Act, Chok Haganat HaTzarchan. And it's important for you to know that senior citizens have special rights that are reserved for seniors that are over the age of 65. What are the terms for you to use those rights? So first of all, like I said, you have to be a customer that's 65 or more. Next, you have had to have made a remote purchase of a product or a service. In that case, you are permitted to cancel that transaction within 4 months from the date of receiving the product or the date you received the agreement, the later of the 2 dates. Okay, it's important to notice that regular people that are under the age of 65 only have 14 days, but elders that are over the age of 65 have 4 months. That's a very, very long time. And many times people don't know that they have the right to cancel after such a long period. And it's a pity not to know that. And that's why this is part of the workshop. What is a remote sale transaction? That's a transaction that involves, like I said, goods or services that are made when the transaction is made without the physical presence of the two parties. Okay, not face to face. So it could be either a brochure that you got by mail and then you made a transaction by phone, or you heard a commercial on the radio, or you got, like I said, a catalog, or you did something by you made a purchase through email or through the website, of course. Okay, all these situations where it's not a face-to-face, that's regarded as a remote sale transaction, where you can cancel that transaction within 45 days and not 14 like other people. Just to give you an example what I'm talking about, suppose tomorrow morning you go and you order a vacation for yourself and your children and a few grandchildren. You're a party of 15 people, okay? And you make reservations to go in August when the grandchildren are on vacation. You go to some hotel in Greece. You can cancel that reservation if 45 days did not pass. It's a long time. You can order now and then decide to cancel. Okay, it's very important because it's a plus that people really don't realize that they have. But you got to notice the person who makes the purchase has to be over the 65. So if I'm 67 and my wife, she's 62, and she's the one who made the reservation for the whole family to go on vacation, then she can't. She only has 14 days because she's not 65 and over. Okay, so notice that when you make these kinds of transactions. Next, I want to talk about beneficiaries in provident funds, kupot gemel, and in senior employee insurance, what's called as bituach menahalim. So, how do you bequeath your kupat gemel? Okay, or let's say, first of all, your pension fund. So, first of all, a pension fund you can't bequeath. A pension fund is a contract with regulations with the fund, and whatever is written there, that's who gets your money. But a kupat gemel or bituach menahalim, for those you appoint in advance beneficiaries when you open your kupat gemel or bituach menahalim. Whoever opened it for you, the agent or the company itself, should have asked you who you want your beneficiaries to be. Now, suppose many, many years ago you opened a kupat gemel and you decided maybe you weren't even married at the time, and you said, well, as a beneficiary, I'll write my brother, for example. Okay. Now years go by, and now you're much older, and now you have a will. And in your will, you wrote instructions that all your estate should go to your wife, and after that, you wanted to go to your children. What will happen to that kupat gemel? Well, the inheritance law determines that the funds in the kupat gemel, they're not part of your estate unless it's specified otherwise. And in most cases, it's not specified otherwise, which means the funds in the kupat gemel are not part of your estate. So what happens now when many, many years ago, you didn't have a wife, you didn't have children, you just had a brother, and you said, okay, well, if something happens to me, I wanted to have whatever I have. And now, like I said, you want things to go to your wife and your children. What overtakes? So sadly to say, there is no clear answer to that, because during the years, the High Court has ruled in a few different ways. In a few situations, they said that the designated beneficiaries from the past, they overtake. In other cases, they said what was written in the will overtakes. In other cases, there was a will, but the will was presented to the kupat gemel company. So in that case, the will overtakes. So what's the recommended course of action in this case, you may ask? Here's the answer. Pull out your papers, check where you have kupot gemel or bituach menahalim. Contact those companies. Check with the companies who are the beneficiaries in those kupot gemel and bituach menahalim, and update them. And then there will be no conflict, and you'll know that everything coincides with your wishes. And if your wishes are that your kupat gemel or bituach menahalim, where all the funds are there, and it could be a lot of money sometimes there, go to your wife, then make sure that the beneficiary, your wife is written as a beneficiary, and your children are written, whoever you want there, and then you won't have any problems. So, what do I suggest you do? I suggest you prepare a checklist. And in that checklist, you should take care of your bank account, make sure you have a banking power of attorney and a survivorship clause. Execute a power of attorney for issuing directives as to medical care to a terminally ill patient. So there will be someone there to give DNR instructions if you're mentally incapacitated, or just instructions not to to have procedures done on you when all will be just pain and suffering and no real point, because you prefer quality of life versus length of life. Next, check for any lost accounts that you may have that belong to you, or like I said before, to deceased relatives that did not know that they had it. Another note, the Hara Kesef and the Hara Bituach that I mentioned before are fairly new websites just in the last few years. Years ago, it was very, very difficult to find lost accounts. So now it's easy. So maybe even your deceased relatives did not do any searches. So do a search. And like I just said before, update the beneficiaries in your provident funds and your Kupot Gemel and your Bituch Menahalim, so that there's no conflict between what your will says and what's said in those documents that were prepared many, many years ago. So don't wait till it's too late. You got to prepare now in order to take control over the days you'll have no control. That's it. Let's see what questions we have. A second.
You happy to read them, or do you want me to read them?
Yeah, no, I want to go into just a second.
Okay, if you have a durable account, if you have a durable power of attorney, can that person also make medical decisions for you?
Yes, the answer is the answer is yes, because in the durable power of attorney, we give instructions regarding financial matters, banking, any assets that a person has, real estate, things like that. If he has a business, how the business should be run. The next has to do with medical matters. In the durable power of attorney, you appoint people who can take care of all your medical matters. I'm talking about your daily healthcare matters, about going to Kupat Cholim. Your child can go to your family doctor, and the family doctor can give him information. There won't be doctor-patient confidentiality. If you need an operation, for example, suppose you have glasses and you need some kind of operations on your eyes in a sutta, someone has to sign an approval to give a consent to that operation. If you're lucid, you give it yourself. But if you're not lucid, then who can sign on your behalf? My wife can't sign on behalf unless she is either a legal guardian to my body, or she has been appointed as a trustee as part of durable power of attorney. So if I'm mentally incapacitated, it's important to have a durable power of attorney that will handle also my medical affairs.
Okay, Daniel asks, is the free burial even for non-Jews?
Yes, if you're an Israeli citizen and you live in Herzliya, in Beersheba, wherever it is, then you are entitled to be. It has nothing to do with your religion.
Okay, Jeff says, do you recommend nursing care insurance Bituach CUD?
Okay, well, I'll address that matter too. So first of all, nursing care insurance covers a very big expense when a person becomes CUD. Nowadays, there's a basic policy that usually you get from your Kupat Cholim, wherever the Kupot Cholim have it as part of a basic. They give a basic coverage, which covers about 5,500 shekel. Of course, if you join when you're older, it's much more expensive. When you join when you're younger, it's obviously cheaper. Many people want extra coverage because they realize that 5,500 shekel is not enough for them. So if their income won't look, it costs about between 8,000 to 10,000 shekel a month to have a caregiver and all the costs around that, as far as when a person needs care like that. So if you have coverage from your bitua, from the Kupat Cholim, which is 5,500, and you need more coverage, then you also need a private bituach CUD. But if your income is enough, then you don't need it. Depends on the person and what his finances enable him.
Right, two people have asked 45 days or 4 months. I can't remember exactly what.
Sorry, my mistake. 4 months. Sorry.
Okay. Ingrid asks, if all my children live overseas, what should she do?
Well, if your children live overseas, First of all, okay, if your children live overseas, then next time when one of your children is here in Israel, then go with that child to the bank, have him come with his passport, and give him a power of attorney in your bank account. Okay, and next time when you're abroad, to wherever you may have funds, if you have a bank account, suppose you're from the UK and you have a bank account left in the UK, then you should do the same thing in the UK. And if you have property in the UK, you should also have an enduring power of attorney to handle that property if you become mentally incapacitated. You can appoint a child who lives abroad or anybody that you trust in order to handle also all your assets that are abroad, just like you should be preparing for people to be able to handle your matters here in Israel, as far as, like I said, banking, a durable power of attorney, and a power of attorney for issuing directives as to a terminally ill patient.
So Ada asks, I think it's the same question really. Do we have to do anything special if our beneficiaries live abroad? So I think sort of the same question.
The beneficiary, if what you meant of the beneficiaries in your bituach in the Kupat Gemel, then no, it doesn't matter where they live. You just have to state their name. And if they don't have an Israeli ID number, then what I would do is I would give a copy of the passport to the Kupat Gemel or to the Bituach Menalim, and they'll write in a passport number, and that'll be a way for that beneficiary when the day comes, even though he's not an Israeli citizen, to come to the fund here in Israel and be a beneficiary and get whatever's there on that fund.
Gideon, you asked, can we get a copy of your presentation? I've got a copy of that. Am I right, Shabit? And then
I prepared a summary. I prepared a written summary, and Dennis will send it out to everybody who's registered on their email. If somebody doesn't receive it for any reason, they can contact me through my website, or my cell phone. No problem.
As long as everybody's registered on here, they can get it. Sandy asks, there is a small pension payment from when my husband taught here. Is it not worth the effort to file for it? Is there any way to get?
It's no effort. It's no effort at all. All you have to do is find out where the money is, what company is holding the money, and all you have to do is you go onto their website. All these
No. It's like 1,000 shekel. And we were told we have to register the will. There's no will. There's a will from the United States. It's a whole project. Nobody wants to bother for less than $100. Can we get the government to stop bothering us?
Well, if you want, you can contact me tomorrow and explain to me exactly what the situation was, and I'll try to give you the best advice I can. Okay.
Jeff asks, how much does getting an enduring power of attorney cost? How much to arrange a legal guardianship cost?
The price, there's a very big range as far as the pricing. Each lawyer charges a different, it could be up to 10,000 shekel, and it could also be 2,000 shekel. I must say that I've seen some enduring power of attorneys that were very cheap, but also were not done in a professional way because they were so cheap. I charge 4,000 shekel plus ma'am if it's for one person, and if it's a couple, I charge 6,000 shekel plus ma'am, and I also come to your house as far as the meetings go. At least for one meeting, I come to you. But just make sure that you go to somebody who knows what he's doing, that specializes in elder law, because there are some lawyers out there that just do it as a hobby, and then when the day comes and their trustees go to the bank with the document, the bank sends them back home and won't do anything that's written there because it's not written up properly.
Thank you. And how much does a legal guardianship cost if you've missed your chance to do that for an elder relative?
How much does what?
A legal guardian.
Legal guardianship. Legal guardianship. Usually the fee it begins at about 5,000 shekel. That's what it would cost for a person for a lawyer to go to court and appoint somebody as a legal guardian. 5,000 shekel usually that's the going rate plus ma'am, of course. But like you said, when I said before, don't wait till it's too late. That's exactly the situation, because you can only execute a durable power of attorney when you're lucid, and if you wait too long, the train leaves the station, and then your family will have to have a legal guardian be appointed. I mean, they'll have to be appointed as legal guardians. And it's a lot of hassle, a lot of bureaucracy. I mean, that's what it was. That's what it was. But nowadays, since 2017, so it's a great alternative, and it's a pity not to use that alternative.
Thank you.
You're happy with that? Nathan says, excellent and comprehensive survey. You did not, I believe, mention that signatories of a non-resuscitation are also given a plastic card to that effect.
It's true. Once you register a power of attorney for issuing directives as to medical care for terminally ill patient, when it's registered, then the Ministry of Health registers it and then sends you back a letter of confirmation that your power of attorney was registered. They send you back the power of attorney with a stamp on it mentioning that this power of attorney was registered. And they also add a plastic card, like a card that you may have if you donated your organs, if you passed away, like a Kartis Edi. You get a plastic card that just reminds you that you have a power of attorney that was registered with the Ministry of Health. It's just a means of reminder. There's nothing really you can do with it. You can carry it in your pocket, but the document itself, that's the document that has to be presented by the trustee to the medical staff for them to give those instructions in an official way. So the card itself has no meaning. You have to have the document itself.
What's here? Can you appoint 2 children for all power of attorney?
Yes, you can appoint when you assuming that you're talking about a durable power of attorney or enduring power of attorney, you can appoint your spouse, you can appoint all your children, you can appoint some of your children, you can appoint your spouse and all your children. There's a whole variety of ways to prepare a durable power of attorney. It's actually tailoring a suit to fit your family and to fit you specifically. So for example, when I come and meet you, and suppose I come and meet a husband and a wife, I sit with them. And first of all, I like to come to their house. I like to see who they are. I like to see the pictures on the wall. I like to see the pictures of the grandchildren. I like to see maybe their hobbies. And I ask them a lot. First of all, I start off by asking a lot of questions about the family. Understand who the family is, who they are, where they're from, what their occupation has been during the years. I ask about the children, about the spouses of the children, what their professions are, where they live, how many grandchildren they have. And then I start asking a whole bunch of questions to try and see what's important to that person, because there's many things that the person doesn't even think about. I also sit, by the way, with the husband separately and with the wife separately in case they want to say something to me, not in front of their spouse. And that enables me to tailor a suit to fit that specific family and that specific couple. And the fact that the couple are married for many, many years, they could be married for 50 years, doesn't mean necessarily that their durable power of attorney has to be identical. In most cases, it's quite similar, but there could be different nuances. But there also could be a situation where the husband wants to appoint his wife and 2 of his 3 children, and the wife wants to appoint the husband and all the children, or she doesn't want to appoint the husband, she just wants to appoint the children. It's all up to the family, it's all up to the people themselves, and we discuss the pluses and the minuses of all the possibilities. And at the end of the day, then the suit is tailored to fit the specific needs of the client.
Okay, so I think we've got 2 more questions, and I think that'll be fine. Someone is asking how much for will and power of attorney, and do you do halachic wills also?
I don't do halacha wills. If anybody wants to contact me about pricing and different documentations and combinations, then I suggest you contact me in person. What's the next question? But I mentioned that for an enduring power of attorney, it's 4,000 shekel plus ma'am if it's for one person, and it's for a couple, it's 6,000 shekel plus ma'am.
And the last question, can directives for medical care and enduring power of attorney be combined in one agreement?
No, they cannot be combined. Sadly, I say, they're not combined. You know how in Israel, every minister, he wants to reserve the rights from the laws that are under his auspice. So the Ministry of Justice is an enduring power of attorney, and anything that has to do with the Terminally Ill Patient Act, that's Misad Habriyut. But what you can do, and I usually do that, by the way, in the enduring power of attorney, in the instructions, in the advanced directive, I usually suggest to my clients to write a few words regarding their how they see life, how they see quality of life versus length of life, and give some directives as far as not wanting to suffer and things like that for their spouse to know, for their children to know, and for the medical staff also to understand. Because In the power of attorney from Misad Habriyut, the one from the Terminal Ill Patient Act, there is very little place to put in different kinds of philosophies and things like that. So that's why in the enduring power of attorney, I usually put a few words regarding the philosophy behind the person so people understand what his wishes would be. It also makes it much easier for the family to make difficult decisions. It's not an easy decision to give DNR instruction, but when you have a clause in advance and you've given those instructions, it makes it easier for your family to give those instructions and not decide, oh, I don't want my father to die. Give him chemotherapy, give him some kind of new drug, give him whatever it is. And in the end, he just suffers for another few months or another few years. So it's a way for a person to actually give those good farewell words, and so the family knows what he wanted.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Shavit. Everybody, I'm sure everybody can take something from this today. It's interesting to all of us. Being of a certain age, we need to start thinking about these things seriously.
Yeah, just one last word. If anybody has any questions that I didn't answer, or they have personal questions or things like that, feel free to call me, give me a call. If you didn't get my phone number before, then all you have to do is write my name in Google and you get to my website. And on my website, I have articles also in English and also in Hebrew regarding all kinds of subjects that we talked about. So if you want to go in a little more depth, you can read those articles. But I urge you to call me if you have any questions. No strings attached. I always like to help out people, even if they're not my clients, because I think it's very important for you guys to be prepared in any way you can for your life to be better in the future.
Sorry, where are you located? I'm sorry.
I'm located in Ramat Sharon, but I come to my clients all over the country.
So,
Shavit, can I just make a comment on one very important thing you said?
Yeah.
It's about checking your bank account for Sif Arichot Yamim. I used to work in a bank and I knew that my account had this clause. And I went to a lecture and they suggested we check it, and I checked it, and lo and behold, it wasn't. And what had happened was my branch had closed and the bank moved me to another branch. But what they do then is they open a new account, and the new account doesn't by default have this clause. So it's very important to check. If you think you've got it, just to double check. You're quite right there.
thank you, David. And thank you for all your background work today. It's very helpful. Puts me at ease as well. Thank you. Shavit, great lecture. Thank you very much. And I'm sure everybody will benefit from it. And we look forward to seeing you again. Thank you, everybody, for participating, and keep coming to all our events. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
You come before you finish.